The chamber of the Galactic Council was vast, a shining dome of crystal and steel where leaders of dozens of alien empires gathered in a circle of power. Their banners hung high above, glowing with pride, as their voices clashed in loud debate. But this day, there was little real debate at all. The decision had been made long before the vote was called. Earth, the small blue world on the edge of the galaxy, was to be cast out. The decree spread across the chamber like a shadow. No trade, no travel, no alliances, and no voice among the stars. Humanity was to be exiled, treated not as an equal race but as an outcast, unworthy of the galaxy's order. The vote was almost unanimous. Alien voices rang out one after another, their tones filled with contempt. Some called humanity arrogant, others called them dangerous, and still more dismissed them as weak. When the final tally appeared, the chamber erupted in laughter and applause. The council had spoken. From the center of the chamber, a lone figure stood. A human envoy, tall and steady in his plain uniform, had come to plead Earth's case. He had spoken calmly, warned quietly, and asked for fairness, but his words had been drowned in ridicule. Fragile creatures, one counselor hissed as the vote passed. They think too highly of themselves. Another, his wings spread wide, mocked openly, let them try to survive without us. They will learn their place soon enough. The envoy did not respond. He did not bow, he did not beg, and he did not raise his voice. He simply lowered his gaze, turned, and walked from the chamber. His boots echoed on the polished floor, a sound far quieter than the laughter that followed him. To the council, his silence was proof of defeat. To humanity, it was something far different. Outside the chamber, alien journalists and aides gathered, their voices buzzing with excitement. They shouted questions at the envoy, mocking words disguised as curiosity. "What will your people do now?" one sneered. "Will you crawl back to your little planet and beg for scraps?" Another shouted, "Do you understand what exile means?" The human did not answer. He moved past them with calm steps, his eyes fixed ahead. He carried no anger on his face, no despair in his eyes, only a stillness that unsettled those who looked too closely. For all their laughter, some felt a chill run through their spines as he passed, though they could not say why. In the council chamber, the vote was celebrated as a victory. Leaders congratulated one another, boasting of their wisdom. They believed they had crushed a potential rival before it could grow, believing Earth too small, too poor, too weak to matter. Their speeches filled the chamber with prideful words. "The galaxy is safer without them," one leader announced. "We have preserved order." But beneath the weight of their arrogance, cracks already began to form. For not all who watched believed the lie. Traders whispered uneasily, remembering human determination in desperate deals. Soldiers shifted uncomfortably, recalling battles where small groups of humans had held the line against impossible odds. And in the shadows of the chamber, some wondered if silence was truly weakness, or something else entirely. Far away, the decree spread across the stars. On alien worlds, screens lit up with the news. Earth had been cast out. Crowds cheered in plazas, merchants raised glasses in taverns, and soldiers mocked the fragile species that had dared to stand against the council. Yet even among the cheering voices, there were quiet ones that questioned. Why had humanity not fought harder against the ban? Why had their envoy not shouted, not threatened, not pleaded? Why had they accepted exile with silence? The questions spread, but they were drowned beneath waves of arrogance and laughter. And on Earth, the decree was received in silence as well. Families watched broadcasts with tight jaws and clenched fists. Factories paused for only a moment before roaring louder. Soldiers stood taller, their training sharper, their eyes harder. Politicians did not shout fiery speeches to the people. They did not need to. Humanity already understood. The galaxy had mocked them for years, treated them as children among giants. Now, they had been cast out completely. But Earth did not break. Earth prepared. The Council believed it had ended the story of humanity. They believed exile would weaken Earth, starve it, and make it beg to return under alien control. What they could not see was the truth that had been building in silence for years. Beneath the oceans, in deserts, under mountains, in frozen wastes, vast factories had been hidden. Fleets had been built in shadows, weapons tested in silence, soldiers trained in secret. Every insult, every dismissal, every decree had only fueled Earth's resolve. And as the envoy's footsteps faded into silence outside the chamber, the galaxy did not know it yet, but the first step toward vengeance had already been taken. The silence on Earth after the decree was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of a storm building strength. Across the planet, news of Exile spread through cities and villages, carried on glowing screens and whispered in crowded streets. Families gathered together, their faces tense but unbroken. Children asked if this meant no more ships from alien worlds would come, no more trade, no more connection to the stars. Parents answered with steady voices, "We will make our own way. We will stand." That resolve echoed everywhere, from the tallest skyscraper to the smallest farm, weaving the people of Earth together in a unity the Council could never imagine. In the deserts, vast hangars opened under the red heat of the sun. Dust swirled as massive war machines crawled from underground bays. Carriers the size of cities rose slowly from hidden silos, their black hulls gleaming against the sky. In frozen wastes, buried deep under mountains of ice, steel doors rumbled open. Submarines disguised as research vessels surfaced, but these were no ordinary ships. Their hulls split apart, and from within, sleek strike craft launched, engines glowing faint blue. Deep under oceans, hidden shipyards stirred, bubbles rising as black dreadnoughts emerged from the depths, water pouring from their sides like falling rain as they climbed into the skies. Factories that had once built peaceful tools of trade now thundered night and day, turning steel and fire into fleets of war. Humanity did not weep. Humanity worked. In command centers carved into rock and buried under layers of earth, screens lit up with maps of the stars. Generals stood over them, their uniforms sharp, their faces hard. They did not speak of surrender. They did not waste time with speeches of despair. Instead, they gave orders with calm voices. Shift resources to shipyards. Redirect power to weapons research. Prepare squadrons for immediate mobilization. The words were simple, but each carried the weight of centuries of patience. Humanity had endured mockery long enough. Now, with exile as the final insult, they had no reason left to hold back. Civilians too became part of the preparation. Workers poured into factories with renewed strength, their hands moving with speed and precision. Farmers sent food into supply lines, ensuring soldiers and engineers never went hungry. Scientists left laboratories and stepped into underground stations, working to refine weapons the galaxy had never seen. Even children began to train, learning skills that might one day be needed to protect their world. Every man, woman, and child felt the weight of the Council's ban, and every one of them turned that weight into determination. The Council thought Earth would crumble without trade. They thought the planet would starve without resources from beyond its borders. But Earth was rich in ways the Council had never bothered to understand. Its oceans teemed with life, its mountains with minerals, its deserts with power drawn from sun and wind. The very isolation the Council had forced upon them became strength, for Earth learned to rely only on itself. No alien fleets carried supplies anymore, no alien ships docked at ports, but human ports still roared with activity, filled with their own vessels preparing for a war the galaxy could not yet see. Above the planet, orbit no longer lay empty. One by one, Terran ships rose from the surface, gliding into formation. Frigates lined up like blades, their railguns glowing faintly. Destroyers took their places in silence, missiles ready and armed. Carriers hovered with bays open, releasing swarms of fighters that circled like vultures. And battleships, vast and unyielding, stood in the center, their shadows covering the stars. They did not move with noise or boast. They moved with precision, with patience, with a silence more terrifying than any roar of engines. The envoy who had walked from the council chamber returned to Earth during this time. He stood in the underground command center, watching as reports poured in of factories surging and fleets gathering. His face was calm, but his voice carried steel when he finally spoke. They believe our silence is weakness. They believe exile will break us. They do not understand that we have been preparing for this moment for years. They cannot see what lies in the shadows, but they will. His words were carried to every leader, every officer, every worker. They became a promise etched into the hearts of all who heard them. Meanwhile, the galaxy outside Earth continued to mock. On alien worlds, council propaganda blared from screens. Leaders boasted of victory, claiming Earth had been reduced to nothing. Crowds laughed, merchants raised glasses, and soldiers mocked humanity as broken. Yet behind the cheering, unease stirred. Traders who had once dealt with humans remembered their persistence, their hunger for survival. Soldiers who had fought small skirmishes with them recalled the way they fought without fear, even when outnumbered. The propaganda tried to bury those memories, but the whispers remained. Some began to wonder if silence from Earth truly meant surrender, or if it meant something else. The Council dismissed such doubts. They looked at their own fleets, their own armies, their own numbers, and believed humanity was cornered prey. They did not see the shadows moving. They did not see the fleets rising. They did not hear the engines of war that already filled Earth's skies. They had made their vote, their decree, their ban. But they had not ended humanity. They had awakened it. In the stillness of space, Earth's ships aligned into patterns only their commanders understood. Orders flowed quietly, encrypted messages passed in silence, and fleets began to slip into the void beyond their world. Patrols were sent not to guard but to watch. Stealth vessels moved first, vanishing into darkness, their black hulls invisible against the stars. Humanity's hand had been forced, but its answer would not be loud, not yet. Its answer would be silence, patience, and shadows. The Council had cast Earth out, believing it would end them. But already the first threads of vengeance were being woven. And as the planet's skies filled with fleets of steel and fire, one truth became clear. Humanity was not preparing to survive exile. Humanity was preparing to make the galaxy regret ever daring to mock them. Council fleets moved along their patrol routes with the same arrogance that had filled their chamber weeks earlier. Cruisers and frigates cut through the void, their engines burning bright as banners of power. Captains strutted across bridges, their voices loud with pride. They mocked the decree's victim, still laughing at the humans who had been cast out. To them, Earth was finished, isolated, helpless, a fragile world with nowhere to turn. Crews shared jokes at humanity's expense, their arrogance echoing across comms. But behind them, in the deep silence of space, unseen shadows followed. For the first time in centuries, Council fleets were being watched, not by allies, but by predators. Human stealth ships had already left Earth. They were built not to shine, not to roar, but to vanish. Their hulls, dark as the void, swallowed starlight. Their engines whispered instead of thundered. For weeks, they shadowed Council patrols, recording every move, tracing every path, marking every weakness. Human crews sat in silence, eyes sharp, hands steady on controls, waiting for orders. They did not chatter, did not laugh. They studied. They prepared. They hunted. When the time came, they struck without hesitation. The first disappearance was small, almost unworthy of note. A lone Council frigate vanished during a routine patrol along the outer sectors. Its last transmission was a half-finished report, cut short by static. At first, the Council dismissed it as a malfunction, another ship lost to reactor failure or navigational error. They told themselves it was nothing. But then, a few days later, an entire three-ship patrol went silent. Wreckage drifted quietly in space, torn apart by weapons no pirate could ever wield. Survivors in escape pods were rescued days later, their voices trembling with fear. They spoke of shadows moving through the stars, of black ships appearing out of nowhere, of weapons that cut through shields like they were paper. They didn't speak. One survivor whispered before collapsing into silence. They didn't demand surrender. They just ended us. The Council's leaders refused to accept it. They labeled the survivors as delirious, their accounts exaggerated. Official reports called it pirate activity, nothing more. Yet fear began to spread through the lower ranks. Soldiers whispered in their barracks, glancing nervously at shadows along their corridors. Pilots joked less, their laughter forced. Captains grew sharper in their commands, hiding the unease growing in their hearts. The fleet still moved, but no one felt safe anymore. The strikes grew bolder. Convoys carrying resources vanished mid-route, their escorts torn apart before they had time to send distress calls. Fuel stations along the border went dark, their beacons destroyed, their crews gone. An entire patrol fleet of 15 ships disappeared in one night, their formation never returning to base. Only scraps of metal were found days later, floating among the stars like tombstones. Each time, the council scrambled to hide the truth, covering the losses with excuses. But rumors traveled faster than their lies. On alien colonies, whispers began to spread. Traders told stories of vanishing convoys, rebels painted Terran symbols in secret on walls, and civilians began to murmur that perhaps Earth had not been broken at all. Some told old stories of human resilience, how they had fought long ago against impossible odds and survived. Others whispered that humanity had been waiting for this very moment, preparing in silence while the galaxy mocked them. The more the council tried to laugh, the less anyone believed it. In the chamber of the council, panic simmered beneath their pride. Reports of missing fleets piled high, but leaders slammed claws and fists on the table, shouting that the humans could not be behind it. They are too weak, one cried, his voice shrill with denial. It is chance. It is pirates. It is malfunctions. Yet even as they shouted, their eyes betrayed doubt. They remembered the envoy who had left in silence, and for the first time, they wondered what that silence had meant. Back on Earth, reports streamed into command centers buried beneath rock and steel. Generals read them without emotion, marking each vanished fleet with calm precision. Officers nodded, carrying out their orders without hesitation. "Do not reveal too much," one commander said, his voice steady as he studied the star map. "Let them doubt. Let them wonder. Fear will do half our work before the next strike." Around him, men and women worked with focus, their hands moving quickly over consoles. There was no boasting, no arrogance, only the quiet certainty of a people who had endured long enough. Above Earth, more ships gathered, their hulls glinting black against the sun. They were no longer hidden under oceans or deserts. They filled the skies, countless in number, waiting for their moment. Yet still, humanity said nothing. No broadcasts, no demands, no threats. Just silence, broken only by the quiet disappearance of the Council's pride. In the villages of alien worlds that had once mocked humanity, small groups of people gathered in fear. They looked at the night skies, wondering if the shadows above were human ships, waiting and watching. Some feared them, others whispered prayers of thanks, hoping Earth would strike the Council that had oppressed them for so long. For the first time, the galaxy began to divide, not by species, not by empire, but by who feared Earth and who hoped for its rise. The Council's decree had been clear. Humanity was to be cast out, forgotten, erased. But the truth had become clearer still. Humanity had not been erased. Humanity had not been silenced. Humanity had been unleashed. Every vanished fleet, every burning wreck, every whisper of black warships proved it. The galaxy had cast Earth out, but in doing so, they had awakened something far greater than they could imagine. And now the shadows of vengeance moved freely, carrying with them the weight of centuries of silence. The Galactic Council could not ignore the disappearances any longer. Reports of missing patrols filled their chambers, and the whispers spreading through the galaxy grew louder with each passing day. Traders refused to travel on Council-protected routes, fearing the black ships. Soldiers deserted, unwilling to serve on patrols that never returned. Colonies trembled in doubt, and rebels painted Terran symbols boldly on their walls. The Council's propaganda no longer silenced the fear. Every loss was another crack in their image of power. At last, the Council decided they would put an end to it. If Earth truly had fleets hidden in the shadows, they would drag them into the light. So they gathered. Summons went out across their vast empires, demanding ships from every world loyal to the Council. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, and dreadnoughts streamed through the stars, converging on a single system chosen to be the stage of their demonstration. The Council wanted numbers, and numbers they had. Soon, hundreds of ships floated in formation, their hulls glowing with the pride of dozens of species. From orbit, the gathered fleet looked like a wall of firepower, an unstoppable storm of weapons and engines. Admirals stood tall on their bridges, their voices booming as they told their crews that humanity would soon learn its place once and for all. The arrogance that had filled the council chamber now filled the void itself. On colonies across the galaxy, broadcasts showed the massive fleet assembling. Alien commentators spoke of the council's might, their voices filled with forced pride. Citizens cheered, though their cheers carried a hollow note. They wanted to believe the council could still protect them. They wanted to believe the disappearances would end. But doubt lingered like a shadow, unshaken by all the speeches and glowing banners. Traders shook their heads, muttering, "They underestimate the humans." Soldiers whispered, "If Earth is behind this, no fleet will be enough." From the shadows beyond the system, Terran eyes watched. Hidden stealth ships had already slipped into the void around the Council fleet, recording every movement, mapping every formation, studying every weakness. They did not rush. They did not panic. They waited. Deep in Earth's command centers, the data streamed in, and calm voices gave calm orders. "They want to test our strength," a general said, his tone like steel. "We will show them what strength is." The Terran commander, standing at the heart of the fleet, looked at the star map. Red dots filled it, showing the Council's massive gathering. Around the edges, green dots began to appear, Earth's fleet sliding silently into place. His voice carried across the bridge, low but unshakable. "They think they are ready. They are not." The battle began not with noise, but with silence. The Council's fleets moved into formation, their ships stretching across the system in a grand display of power. Admirals shouted orders, confident their show of force would draw the humans out. For long minutes, nothing happened. The void was empty, their senses silent. Some captains laughed, mocking the rumors, declaring the humans too weak to face them. Others grew uneasy, their claws tapping consoles, their wings twitching with nerves. Then the shadows moved. One by one, black shapes emerged from the void. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Terran warships, dark and silent, appeared as if pulled from the darkness itself. Their hulls absorbed the starlight, their engines glowed faintly, their weapons were already primed. In moments, they surrounded the Council fleet, stretching across the stars like a noose. The galaxy watched as the arrogance of the Council turned to silence. A calm human voice cut across every frequency. It was not loud, it was not angry, it was steady and cold. "You cast us out. You called us weak. You thought exile would end us. You were wrong." The words carried into every bridge, into every colony, into every home where the broadcast was shown. Council admirals froze, their confidence crumbling as the full size of the Terran fleet became clear. The humans had not been hiding scraps of ships. They had been building an armada greater than anything the galaxy had seen. Then the Terran fleet struck. Railguns fired in silence, slamming through cruisers before shields could rise. Missiles streaked across the void, tearing carriers apart in blazing fire. Stealth bombers darted through gaps, unleashing payloads that split dreadnoughts in half. Council ships tried to return fire, but their formations collapsed instantly. Their admirals shouted desperate orders, their voices drowned by static and explosions. Hundreds of ships were reduced to wreckage in minutes. For those watching across the galaxy, the battle was a nightmare. Alien citizens sat frozen before their screens, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Council's grand fleet, the pride of countless worlds, was burning. Ships that had been symbols of dominance for centuries were torn apart like paper. Survivors' screams filled the comms, cut short as their vessels disintegrated. The silence of humanity had ended, and their vengeance spoke louder than any council decree ever could. The Terran commander watched the destruction from his flagship, his expression calm. He gave no speeches, no boasts, only precise orders. "Target the flagships. Do not waste time. End it quickly. His officers obeyed, their hands moving with steady precision. Within hours, the system was silent. Wreckage drifted where once the council had stood proud. Fires burned in the void, slowly dying as silence returned once again. When the last council ship fell, the human commander gave a single command. Transmit. Across the galaxy, screens flickered again. His image appeared, his voice calm. You thought exile would break us. Instead, it freed us. You thought silence was weakness. Instead, it was preparation. You mocked us, and now you burn. Let this be your first lesson. Earth does not kneel. Earth does not forgive. The message ended. The silence that followed was heavier than any roar. On alien worlds, people stared at their screens, their pride shattered, their fear overwhelming. In the council chamber, leaders sat frozen, their eyes wide with terror. They had gathered their might to crush humanity, but humanity had revealed its true strength instead. The galaxy now knew the truth. Earth had been preparing all along. The exile had not ended them. It had unleashed them. The galaxy shook with disbelief. News of the council's grand fleet being destroyed spread faster than any fire, faster than any official could contain it. Screens on alien worlds replayed the same burning images over and over. Council cruisers splitting apart, dreadnoughts torn in half, carriers exploding into silent fireballs while Terran ships cut through them with frightening precision. The footage was leaked by survivors, carried by smugglers, whispered by traders, and eventually broadcast on networks the council no longer controlled. The more the leaders tried to suppress it, the faster it spread. The truth was undeniable. The humans had revealed their strength, and the council's power had been broken in a single day. On council worlds, panic erupted. Civilians flooded streets, demanding answers. Merchants pulled their ships from trade routes, unwilling to risk cargo on paths haunted by Terran fleets. Families whispered in terror that if humanity could destroy the mightiest fleet in hours, what chance did their world have if Earth chose to come next? Soldiers muttered among themselves, their faith in the council crumbling. Some threw down their weapons, refusing to fight. Others deserted outright, vanishing into the growing tide of rebellion across colonies. The once unshakable order of the galaxy began to collapse. The council responded with desperation. In their chamber, leaders screamed at one another, blaming each other's fleets, accusing rivals of sabotage, demanding impossible answers. Their propaganda machines roared, flooding screens with declarations. The battle was exaggerated, they claimed. The humans used illegal technology. Our fleets are already regrouping. Victory is still in our hands. But their words rang hollow. People remembered the screams of admirals cut short mid-transmission. They remembered the silence that followed, when no council ship answered calls for aid. No speech could erase what everyone had seen with their own eyes. On distant colonies, rebellion spread like wildfire. Workers stormed garrisons, shouting Earth's words, "We do not kneel." Civilians painted Terran symbols on walls, chanting for freedom from council control. Soldiers sent to crush them often refused to fire, their loyalty gone. Some joined the uprisings, handing over weapons to rebels. In more than one world, whole military bases declared independence, their commanders broadcasting that they would no longer serve the council. The galaxy fractured piece by piece, the chains of fear snapping as Earth's vengeance gave others courage. Traders, too, shifted their loyalties. Smugglers who once feared council patrols now carried goods to Terran-controlled systems, eager to profit from a rising power. Merchant guilds quietly reached out to human envoys, offering supplies and resources in exchange for protection. The council's economy, built on centuries of dominance, began to bleed. Ships sat idle in ports, resources piled up unsold, and entire markets collapsed. Wealthy families who had mocked Earth suddenly whispered among themselves, wondering if humanity might offer them safety in exchange for loyalty. Meanwhile, on Earth, the silence remained. The people did not celebrate with cheers or parades. They worked harder. Factories increased their pace, shipyards expanded, and recruits filled training camps. Families watched broadcasts of the destroyed council fleet with steady eyes. They did not smile, but their hearts hardened with resolve. They knew the war was far from over. The Council still had soldiers, still had planets, still had the arrogance to fight again. And so Earth prepared, not for glory, but for survival and justice. The Council had cast them out, but humanity would make sure the galaxy never forgot what followed. In the Council chamber, the situation grew worse each day. Leaders shouted louder, but their words meant less. Some demanded immediate retaliation, others begged for peace, and still more tried to cling to their power with lies. Their unity, once their greatest strength, shattered completely. Councils that had once spoken with one voice now descended into chaos. Claws scraped stone tables, wings flared in rage, and fangs bared as accusations filled the air. Their pride had been broken, and without pride, they had nothing. Among the people, whispers of humanity grew darker. Children asked their parents what the humans wanted, why they fought, and why no one could stop them. Parents had no answers. Old soldiers muttered in fear, "They've been planning this for years." Scholars began digging through old records, searching for clues in humanity's history. They found tales of wars where humans had stood against impossible odds and survived. They found stories of resilience, of survival, of vengeance. And the more they read, the colder their blood ran. The Terran fleets, meanwhile, did not rest. They moved silently through the void, striking again and again at weak points. Convoys vanished, outposts burned, and communication hubs went dark. Each strike was precise, clean, and ruthless. No long battles, no wasted time. Humanity's fleets appeared, destroyed their targets, and vanished back into the shadows before reinforcements could arrive. For every Council fleet that formed, 2 more systems fell silent. The galaxy no longer knew where Earth's fleets were or when they would strike next. Fear became their greatest weapon. In alien taverns, smugglers whispered about human ships. "They're everywhere," one said, voice trembling. "I saw them with my own eyes. Black hulls like shadows, weapons that slice through shields like air." Others nodded, telling stories of friends who vanished in the void. Even those who hated Earth began to admit the truth. The humans had grown too strong to stop. The Council tried one last desperate move. They broadcast across the galaxy, calling for unity against Earth. Their leader stood before the chamber, his voice breaking as he shouted, "If we do not stand together, humanity will destroy us all." But no one listened. Allies turned away, colonies ignored the call, and some even laughed. The Council had mocked humanity, exiled them, declared them weak, and now their cries for help rang empty. Their authority had crumbled. And through it all, the humans said little. Their commander gave no new speeches, no long declarations. Only short messages followed each strike. "You cast us out. Now you pay. You thought us weak. You thought wrong. Earth does not forgive." Those words, repeated again and again, burned into the galaxy's memory. Every world knew them. Every soldier feared them. Every child whispered them before sleep. The Council had thought casting out humanity would make them weak. Instead, it had broken the Council's own empire. Panic spread faster than fleets could move, rebellions stronger than armies could crush. And in the silence of space, the Terran fleets grew ever closer. The galaxy was restless. Every corner of space buzzed with whispers, fear, and questions. The Council had promised strength, but their grand fleet had been reduced to wreckage in a single battle. Propaganda screens shouted lies, insisting the Council still held power, but no one believed it anymore. Trade routes lay empty, patrols refused to leave port, and colonies rebelled in open defiance. The Council had mocked humanity, but now their silence felt like a storm pressing down on every world. And then, when the fear was at its height, humanity broke its silence. It began suddenly. Across thousands of systems, communication networks flickered and died. Council broadcasts froze mid-sentence. Market screens went black. Even military channels fell into silence. A wave of static filled the galaxy, and then, slowly, an image appeared. A single man stood tall against the backdrop of stars, dressed in a dark Terran uniform marked by scars of battle. His face was calm, his eyes steady, his presence heavy with authority. Behind him, the faint outline of black warships shimmered, their size impossible to mistake. Humanity had chosen its voice carefully, and that voice cut into every world, every station, every home. "You cast us out," the commander said, his voice low and steady. "You declared us unworthy, criminals among the stars. You laughed at our warnings. You mocked our silence. But silence is not surrender, it is preparation." His words rolled across the galaxy like thunder. Civilians stopped in their tracks to listen. Soldiers froze mid-step, their weapons falling silent. Traders leaned close to their screens, their hearts pounding. The commander's tone carried no rage, no wild boasting, only calm certainty, and that certainty was more terrifying than any scream. The images shifted. Wreckage of the Council's grand fleet filled the screens, burning silently in the void. Crippled dreadnoughts, shattered carriers, lifeless hulks drifting without power. "This is what your leaders called strength," the commander said. "This is what your council promised you. They believed numbers could break us. They believed arrogance could protect them. They were wrong." On council worlds, civilians gasped. Some shouted in anger, demanding their leaders explain. Others whispered in awe, realizing humanity had done what no other race had ever dared. In military bases, soldiers stood motionless, the commander's words echoing in their ears. Loyalty wavered like a candle in the wind. The galaxy's fear grew sharper with every passing second. The broadcast continued. "Earth does not kneel," the commander declared. "Earth does not forget. And Earth does not forgive." His eyes seemed to pierce through the screens, looking directly into the hearts of all who watched. "You wanted us gone. You wanted us forgotten. Instead, you have made us stronger. We will protect our own. We will defend our allies. But to those who raise a hand against us, know this, you will fall." The screen shifted again, showing Terran fleets rising from Earth, black hulls blotting out the skies. Carriers releasing endless swarms of fighters, destroyers aligning railguns, stealth ships slipping into the void. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer the small, fragile race the galaxy had mocked. They were a power, a storm, a force that could no longer be ignored. When the broadcast ended, silence followed. For long minutes, no one moved. On colonies, workers stared at blank screens, their tools forgotten in their hands. In alien marketplaces, traders froze mid-sail, unable to speak. In military barracks, soldiers sat in stunned silence, some trembling, others whispering the words they had just heard. "Earth does not kneel. Earth does not forgive." Those words spread faster than the council could contain them. In the council chamber, chaos erupted. Leaders slammed claws and fists against the great table, shouting over one another. "How did they breach our networks?" one cried. "How could they override every system?" another screamed. Technicians stammered explanations, insisting Terran encryption was unlike anything they had ever seen. The counselors turned on one another, accusations flying, panic spilling from their once proud voices. For the first time in centuries, the chamber felt small, not powerful. They had been mocked in front of the galaxy, their weakness revealed, their control shattered. Outside the chamber, rebellions grew stronger. Colonies that had already whispered of freedom now shouted it openly. Citizens took to the streets, chanting Earth's words. "We do not kneel." Banners hung from buildings, painted on walls, carved into stone. Soldiers defected in greater numbers, their loyalty shifting toward humanity's rising shadow. Whole garrisons declared independence, no longer willing to fight for a council that had led them to humiliation. Meanwhile, on Earth, the people watched the broadcast replay with quiet pride. There were no cheers, no festivals, no arrogance. Only resolve. Families whispered the words to their children. Schools taught them as lessons. Soldiers repeated them like vows. Factories roared louder, shipyards grew busier, and the skies filled with even more black warships. The galaxy had finally seen the truth of humanity's strength, and Earth would make sure they never forgot. The commander, back aboard his flagship, stood at the center of the bridge. His officers waited silently, watching as reports of chaos poured in. Colonies rebelling, soldiers defecting, markets collapsing. The broadcast had struck harder than any missile. The commander studied the star map, glowing red with Council territory, and spoke in the same calm tone that had carried across the galaxy. Fear will finish what we began. They will destroy themselves trying to resist. And when they collapse, Earth will rise. His words were met with quiet nods. No one cheered. No one smiled. They all understood. This was not a war for glory. It was survival, vengeance, and respect. Humanity had been cast out, but now it stood stronger than ever. The galaxy trembled, knowing the Council could no longer hide behind arrogance. And so, with a single broadcast, the balance of the stars shifted. The Council's decree had tried to erase humanity. Instead, it had created a legend. Across every world, in every heart, one truth echoed again and again. The galaxy had cast Earth out, but Earth was already preparing its revenge, and that revenge had only just begun. The Council chamber, once the proud throne of galactic power, was now nothing more than a cage of chaos. Where once alien leaders had spoken with confidence and arrogance, now their voices were shrill with fear. Reports flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. Fleets lost contact, colonies declaring independence, rebellions spreading like fire. The councillors shouted at one another, their claws slamming against stone tables, wings snapping in fury, tails thrashing in panic. No unity remained. Each leader screamed only for their own empire, their own survival. The unity that had held the galaxy together for centuries had shattered completely. On one world after another, the people rose up. Colonies that had long suffered under the Council's heavy taxes and harsh laws finally saw their chance. Workers stormed government buildings, soldiers deserted their posts, and banners of rebellion flew over cities. In some places, the rebels painted Terran symbols on walls, shouting Earth's words into the streets, "We do not kneel." In others, they toppled statues of Council leaders, smashing them into dust before cheering crowds. The spark of defiance lit by humanity's broadcast had become an inferno no fleet could extinguish. Council generals tried to rally what ships remained, but their orders were ignored, their fleets scattered. Some captains, hearing the Terran commander's words still echoing in their minds, refused to fight. Others pretended to obey but vanished into deep space, abandoning their posts. A few even defected outright, offering their ships and crews to rebel colonies. Entire squadrons went dark, refusing to answer the Council's desperate calls. What had once been a proud military was now nothing more than a collection of frightened, leaderless crews. Merchants too abandoned the Council. Once, trade guilds had been the arteries of the Empire, carrying resources across the stars. Now those same guilds cut their ties, redirecting ships toward Terran-controlled space. Smugglers openly flew Terran symbols on their hulls, daring Council patrols to stop them. Traders who once feared human determination now sought their protection, believing it safer to serve Earth than to cling to the Council's failing power. Markets collapsed, prices soared, and wealth drained away from the chamber that had once boasted of ruling all. On alien streets, civilians gathered around glowing screens, watching as Council broadcasts turned desperate. Leaders pleaded for loyalty, their voices breaking with fear. "Stay calm," they said. "We are still strong." But no one listened. Instead, people turned away, their faith broken. In taverns, old veterans whispered that the Council had always underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. Young men and women whispered promises to fight, not for the Council, but for their freedom. Even within the Council's own capital, rebellion took root. Crowds gathered outside the Great Dome, shouting in fury. Guards tried to hold the line, but some lowered their weapons, unwilling to fire into their own people. The chants rose louder, echoing into the chamber itself. "Down with the Council! We do not kneel!" The same words humanity had spoken now thundered from alien throats, shaking the very walls of the chamber. Meanwhile, humanity watched calmly. In Earth's underground command centers, generals studied the chaos spreading across the star maps. Systems once glowing red with Council control flickered into rebellion, their signals breaking away. The commanders gave no shouts of triumph, no loud boasts. Instead, they nodded quietly. "Fear is working," one general said. "They are breaking themselves. We need only push a little harder." On the Terran flagship, the commander stood with his officers, observing reports from across the galaxy. His voice was as steady as ever when he spoke. "Do not rush. Do not overextend. Let them destroy themselves, and we will take what remains." His officers obeyed without question, their discipline unshaken. Humanity did not need to scream its victory. The silence of their patience was enough to make the galaxy tremble. In villages on distant alien worlds, children whispered Earth's words to one another before sleep. "We do not kneel. Earth does not forgive." Parents did not silence them. Instead, they nodded, their faces grim with understanding. The words of humanity had spread beyond human borders, becoming more than just a vow of vengeance. They had become a symbol of defiance, a promise that the Council's rule was finished. Back in the chamber, the councillors finally saw the truth. Their decrees carried no weight, their armies no loyalty, their people no faith. Their voices broke into silence as they realized they were rulers of nothing. They had cast Earth out to protect their power, but that act had shattered it instead. Now they were trapped in the ruins of their own arrogance. The galaxy had changed forever. Rebellion burned across the stars. Loyalty to the Council crumbled with each passing day. And humanity, calm and silent, stood at the center of it all, their fleets watching from the void, their vengeance still in motion. The Council had lost control of the galaxy, and everyone knew it. Earth had not just survived exile, it had turned exile into a weapon. And in the silence of space, as fleets drifted in perfect formation, the galaxy finally understood. The Council had mocked the wrong species. Humanity had waited, humanity had prepared, and now humanity was unstoppable. The collapse of the Council was no longer a possibility. It was already happening. The galaxy had reached its breaking point. The once proud Council was crumbling under the weight of its own arrogance. Colonies burned with rebellion, fleets scattered in panic, and soldiers deserted in waves. Markets had collapsed, trade routes lay empty, and the people who once looked to the Council for order now turned their eyes toward Earth. The vote to cast humanity out had been meant to erase them from the stars. Instead, it had unleashed something the galaxy could not stop. And now, as the Council drowned in chaos, humanity chose its moment to speak again. It began the same way as before, silence. Across thousands of worlds, communication networks flickered and died. Council propaganda froze mid-sentence. Angry speeches cut off in static. A wave of darkness swept across the galaxy, leaving billions staring at blank screens. And then, slowly, the image returned. A human commander stood tall, his face calm, his uniform marked by battle, his presence filling the void. Behind him, a wall of Terran warships stretched across the stars, their black hulls glowing faintly, their weapons gleaming like cold fire. The sight alone sent shivers through every world. Humanity had not come with noise. They had come with certainty. "You cast us out," the commander began, his voice steady. "You laughed at our silence. You believed exile would break us. But exile only freed us. We do not kneel. We do not forget. And we do not forgive." His eyes were cold, his words cutting like blades. The Council's fleets are gone. Their armies are broken. Their colonies rise against them. They ruled with arrogance, and arrogance has destroyed them. The age of the Council is finished. A new law now rules these stars. The broadcast shifted, showing burning wreckage of Council ships, colonies tearing down banners of the chamber, soldiers raising Terran symbols over captured bases. The galaxy watched as rebellion consumed the old order. The commander's voice carried over the images. "Earth will protect its own. Earth will defend its allies. But hear me well, to those who mock us, to those who betray us, to those who raise a hand against us, you will fall. No Council decree can change this. No fleet can stop this. This is the law of Earth." On Council worlds, Silence filled the streets. Civilians stood frozen before their screens, their hearts pounding. Some trembled in fear, others wept with relief, and still others whispered words of hope. In rebel colonies, the broadcast was met with cheers. Crowds flooded streets, chanting Earth's words, waving banners painted with Terran colors. Soldiers who had once served the Council openly defected, saluting the new power rising from exile. Traders made their choice as well, pledging ships and resources to humanity, knowing the galaxy's future no longer belonged to the Chamber of Arrogance but to the world once mocked. Inside the Council's grand dome, the leaders sat in stunned silence. Their claws and fists, once slammed in pride, now lay limp on the table. They had nothing left, no fleets, no soldiers, no voice. For centuries they had ruled by fear, but now fear belonged to humanity. The chamber that had once been filled with laughter at Earth's expense now echoed with despair. A truth they could no longer deny pressed down upon them. They were no longer rulers. They were relics. Meanwhile, on Earth, the people did not cheer wildly. They did not celebrate with arrogance. Instead, they stood together with quiet pride. Families held one another, workers toiled in factories, soldiers sharpened their skills. They understood what this victory meant, and what it demanded. Humanity had risen, but survival still required vigilance. The galaxy would test them again and again, but now the people of Earth knew they could endure anything. They had been mocked, exiled, and left to die, but they had emerged stronger than any had believed possible. In the command center of the Terran flagship, the commander watched the star map as red zones flickered into chaos, turning to green as colonies declared for Earth. His officers stood in silence, awaiting his words. He spoke calmly, as always. We did not seek war. We did not seek exile. But when they forced it upon us, we answered. Now, the galaxy has seen the truth. We are no longer prey. We are power. And we will not be forgotten again. His officers nodded, their faces grim, their resolve unshaken. The broadcast ended, but its echo lingered in every world. Civilians whispered the words to one another. Soldiers repeated them like vows. Children learned them as lessons. We do not kneel. We do not forget. We do not forgive. The galaxy's balance had shifted forever. And so the story of exile ended not in silence, but in vengeance. The Council had cast Earth out, believing it would vanish into weakness. Instead, Earth had risen from the shadows, carrying with it the fire of survival and the weight of patience. The Council was broken, the galaxy was remade, and humanity now stood as a power none could ignore. From this day forward, every world, every empire, every counselor knew the truth. The galaxy had cast Earth out, but Earth's revenge was already in motion, and it could never be stopped.